welcome to Penny Bradley, Nacht Waffen Pilot Presents. And today, my friend Matt Tracy is back with us. So,
Hey,
what did you want to talk about today?
I guess we'll talk about that subject with the Guardians.
Okay.
It's a little hard subject because I've only recently found out about it, memory recall and all, and been dealing with it. Learning that, well, it's been a long time, years that I've known that I had memories of standing in front of a guy that asked me if I would take on a mission to Earth and incarnate in a body on Earth. And I didn't understand any more than that until recently. Suddenly memories started coming back. I did have some help, but ultimately I started remembering the chair that we use to incarnate with artificially in other people. The chair technology that we use it's gone through a lot of evolution upgrades. It's millions of years old, the tech.
Okay.
My guide told me a whole story. I remember sending you a message with the story about the invention of the technology.
You've sent me a lot of messages over the years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's okay. Go ahead and give us a recap of what you can remember.
Well, my guide, everybody who is a guardian has a guide that follows them around. This, I think, is actually where the concept of the guardian angel actually comes from, because they're in astral form and they're always there at your side. They don't really protect you. They're not there to physically interact and help out. They're there to keep you on mission. Because by law, if you're incarnating into a primitive society, you are required to have all of your memories of the guardians suppressed. So you go in as a blank slate.
Yeah, you have to be as one of the people that you're with so that you don't contaminate.
Exactly. Now, if you start to remember while you're in that incarnation, that's perfectly fine. That's fair game. Now, of course, there are mission parameters. And if you start to remember, your guide will let you know your mission parameters, what you can talk about, what you can't talk about. He's there to keep you on mission, and whatever, takes you away from, mission, he will let you know. He or she will let you know. I have met in some of my family members, I've met their guides throughout the years that I thought they were, just guardian angels. Mine, I thought for years his name was John. Turns out his name's not John, because I couldn't hear him. I could see him. I could see his lips moving, and I was trying to read his lips as he was telling me his name. And John, he's trying to emphasize as hard as he can because he knows I can't hear him, but I can see his lips moving. And so I'm thinking he's saying John when he's actually saying Jael. Do you see how the lip movement looks almost the same?
Yeah.
If you completely blank out the audio, the lip movements look almost exactly the same. So,
my first guide decided to make a deal with the opposition.
Oh no.
So, yeah, it was about 2015 that we caught him at it. And I've had a couple of others volunteer to take over the position. And after 6 months to a year, they tell me I'm too damaged to work with. So
I've had the same guide my entire life, Jael, that up until the last few months I've been calling John. I even remember telling my mom when I was little about my imaginary friend John. And I remember her laying on the sofa. I remember when I was telling her about it, her laying on the sofa watching TV and listening to me tell her the story, and she thought I was making it up. Like, she straight up told me, I think you're making this up. Anyway.
Well,
moving on.
I had an imaginary friend when I was little. A little blonde boy, about my age. And we used to play together until I was about 10 or so. Yeah. It turned out to be one of the people that I had been at Langley with, who had been on Mars with me, and
you had a psychic link too.
I had a psychic link to him, and I was in California and he was in the Philippines. He was not Filipino. His father was a missionary for the American Baptists.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, that was something that turned up later. I had a psychic link with him our entire lives. He died in 2016.
Sorry to hear that.
I've had several interviewers try to turn it into a classic love story, not realizing that he was actually murdered by the CIA. So, yeah, I usually end up in tears for the rest of the day after they bring that up. So, people forget that these are actually our lives that we're sharing. They think we're making up stories, and we're not. There's emotions attached. I usually slide into disassociation for interviews so that I'm not as traumatized by the questions people ask.
I'm almost in disassociation all the time these days. It's the only way I can go to work and do my job.
I can understand that. I spent most of my life in disassociation, and
I wake up with horrible things, memories, whatnot, and then I immediately get dressed and go to work.
Yeah.
The only way I can do that is to disassociate.
And the people that you work with probably don't have a clue that there was anything wrong the night before.
No, not people I work with, my customers. Nobody realizes anything's wrong at all.
They just think that you're a little bit emotionally distant.
Actually, I don't show emotional distance to my coworkers and my customers. It's like I'm able to disassociate strictly from the memories and the experiences. And when I'm focusing on a person in front of me, I can connect to that person and disassociate from all of this. I
haven't been able to do that. It's like it's either shut off.
I never learned how to do it. It's just something I do. But I've been a salesman before, and I work, as a delivery man now. I deal with people that don't need to know what I'm dealing with in my life. I'm in pain at work, and people don't know how much physical pain I'm in while I'm performing my job. Because I disassociate, and it's like I could be wrenched over limping, but you're not going to see it on my face.
Yeah.
I've been at the point where I can't move at all. I'm laying on the floor. I can't even bend to sit up. And yet you don't see it on my face at all.
Well, I can only disassociate so far. And like last year when when I woke up with my shoulder broken, um, that's been enough pain for almost a year now. It'll be a year on the 26th. And I had to stop doing counseling because I couldn't deal with I couldn't deal with my own shit, much less anybody else's.
Right. I'm not in pain sitting here right now, but you know, just walking over there, just doing dishes for a few minutes is painful. And I deliver boxes for a living.
Yeah.
I started this ionizer machine that you put in the water, you put your feet in it, and it pulls toxins out of the feet. And it's actually been helping to reduce my pain levels.
Good. I did a whole lot of detox stuff when I was first disabled at work, hoping that I'd be able to go back to work. And it helped pain levels, but it didn't help enough for me to be able to go back into the workforce. So.
Yeah, it does help with the pain, but when storms come around, like the depression that just passed over us, just left yesterday, that shoots my pain up.
Well, we've had a cold spell come through here, and it involves some rain, and it will eventually hit your part of the world.
Yeah, they've already started naming depressions. We just had one pass over us, and I was working out in all of that, delivering boxes. Bosses said, if the roads ain't flooded, you're going.
Yeah, I can understand a boss saying that.
Coming home every day completely soaked. Boxes got to get delivered.
You'd think you'd have rain gear.
Oh, I could get rain gear if I wanted. I just don't like it because it makes me sweat even harder. I feel like I'm in an oven. Even the breathable stuff, I feel like I'm in an oven, just completely covered in sweat. So it's either be covered in oven hot sweat or nice cool water. Okay. One or the other. Pick one.
Either way, you're wet.
Either way, I'm wet. One's less comfortable than the other. Because my body heat, my body temperature is so high. It's like you take my temperature and it reads normal, yet my skin will literally steam when I'm sweating. I even showed it to my boss one day back at the beginning of the year. It was 38, 37 degrees outside, something like that. And I walk in the door. I'm just done loading the truck up, okay? I'm loading the truck up. I'm already sweating. I've got a t-shirt on. Everybody's freaking out. Why are you just wearing a t-shirt? And then I put my arm out, and all you see is steam coming off of my arm. I told my boss, I said, you remember when I said I overheat very easily? You know the temperature outside. Look at this. Now you know I'm not lying.
I have the other problem. I have trouble staying warm. But
I overheat too easily.
My thyroid and adrenals don't work, so I'm on replacement meds, and the dosage still isn't high enough.
We're working on my hormones right now, trying to get things stabilized, seeing what helps.
Now, I've seen in I've seen in other people's interviews where there's a common misconception out in the public that because we were super soldiers or secret space program assets, that we're supposed to have perfect bodies here on Earth. The truth of the
My
matter,
body's falling apart.
the truth of the matter is that when they send us back, they send us back pre-programmed to fall apart 20 years later. And whatever time frame you left, when you first come back, the body you're back in is pre-programmed that in 20 years you're going to have problems. Well, I was taken at age 4. So at 22, so they had the timing off a little bit, I came down with an autoimmune disorder. And I've basically been sick ever since. And in the groups that I admin, that is the common experience of these veterans, is that from the time you first are taken, about approximately 20 years later, you get sick, and then you stay sick the rest of your life. And it's almost like they intend to keep us hassled, disabled, unable to come forward and expose them, even if we did remember. And most of us don't remember. Um, I
If
found I found that the date that you are sent back, like it was 2014 when I was sent back from my first mission. So a, a year or two either way of that is your window of opportunity to remember that altar. So that was why the NSA chose 2013 for me to have my memory activated, was because it was the window of opportunity for that mission. So, and once they activated one altar's memory, the rest of them keep falling in place. It's like a cascade effect.
I know I've been remembering my whole life. I remember being little and remembering my first memories were of that dark room that I call the waiting room, with Kat and the other kids that we were all put. We found out later on that we were all brought there from different moments in time, because I've met up with Kat and I think one other, and we're all different ages, and yet in that room we're exactly the same age.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah, in that room we're exactly the same age, me and Kat, and we grew up on a reptilian dominant world, being raised by Jur,
Mm-hmm.
and yet, we were raised together pretty much. We looked exactly the same age, and we were sent back the same time. I suspect I have no memory of being sent back from that stint yet. I just remember that was the first memories I had actually gotten, was being in that room and being in a training room, a really dark, very large training room that we were being evaluated and tested in. It was both me and Kat. That was the second memory I remembered as a kid in dreams, just reoccurring dreams. It was the exact same thing, just going over and over. I was a kid, maybe 7, 8 years old when I started remembering that.
Well, I've had certain recurring traumatic nightmares that I knew could not take place on Earth, so I had no context for them without the rest of the memories. But when the memories were activated, what was on top of the pile were the most traumatic. So that was not fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always the memories with the greatest emotional energy that are the strongest memories, and they always come up first. It's been my experience too.
Yeah. So the very first thing that I remembered after the activation was when the Mars Raptors came through the wall in the cafeteria in Shula.
I remember you telling me about that.
That was the first memory, and I'm looking at this and going, okay, that could not have happened on Earth. Where was this?
And that
And
was the moment your psychic ability really kicked in.
mm-hmm, yeah, I
It's
produced.
always, I figured out it's always a extremely traumatic experience. Your subconscious is adapting and trying to find a way to protect you from it. And
Yeah,
that's how your psychic ability defines, how am I going to protect myself from this? And that's how your psychic ability takes form.
now I'm not going to out these people because they've answered a lot of questions for me. But since I've been public, I've been contacted by people from more than one secret society. And yeah, that's been a mind blower all on its own. But what I found out was the reason we were taken as small children and tortured was because the torture not only creates the altars that gives them deniability, but it activates your psionic abilities that you can have tremendous abilities
That's been
and
my assessment.
never know you have them unless they're activated in childhood. And this is that this one man in particular said that this is how they activate the abilities in their own children.
So they put their own children in cages in dark rooms and electrify the cages for weeks on end.
Yeah. They drown them, they do all sorts. They
Put them
all this
in tanks and fill the tanks with deadly insects.
all the stuff they did to us, they do to their own kids to activate their psionic abilities. And so the CIA simply learned it from them. So
It's a
I'm looking
very
at
sick and twisted cycle.
it's a very sick and twisted cycle. But at the same
And the
time,
people that are doing it to us didn't start the cycle. They're just
they're just
in, they're
victims to
pawns themselves, just in a long line.
just a long, long, long line of this is how you activate your kids. And the CIA knew that they had shot us up with DNA that should have made us extremely psychic, and this was the only way they knew how to activate us. And
I
I still
know.
haven't forgiven them, but at least intellectually, I understand why they did it. That if you look at my very first interviews, that was the big question. Why are these people torturing little kids? Well, it's to activate our psionic abilities.
Now, your psionic abilities have a kind of a foundational universal setting. There, it's not like the X-Men where you get one ability and that's what you're stuck with. It's a subconscious thing where how it manifests is a defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
To the trauma at hand. I need to protect myself from this trauma at this moment. How do I best do that? And how your psychic ability manifests in that moment is to that it to help you in that situation. But you're not isolated just to that. That just activates things. later on, you can learn, once it's all activated, you learn how to re-access that part of the mind that created that ability and then mold it into other things. That's how I learned and picked up how to teleport short distances. I remember using it in combat, how to move faster. I remember using kind of like a remote viewing ability as kind of like a radar. I could see in a complete spherical field around me in every single direction. I was completely aware of everything up to a certain point. If I
I've done
quieted my
exercises
mind,
for
I
that.
can do that. But then if I focus my mind to a single point, distance is not a problem. Distance is not a factor. But up into a certain distance away, if I do not focus on a single point in space, I'll see everything around me. Not right now. I don't have access to that ability. When I learned that when they suppress your memories, when they send you back, they suppress your ability to access that psionic part of yourself. And it's later on in life when you begin to, when those suppressions and those blocks begin to deteriorate, that's when you start to access this, first starting in a limited way and then it builds up.
Well, I've always had the telepathy, and I've always had the ability to see into other dimensions. And I used to get into lots of trouble with my parents about it. I
I've
used to get into trouble at school about it.
That is one thing.
But as
That's
far,
actually a natural ability for all humans. They just
but
forgot.
all humans don't have it or don't use it.
They don't use it.
But
That
that
actually is not required to what those abilities are actually. The torture isn't required to access all of that.
but
I'm
I
talking
have
about the more
always had
extreme abilities.
those. And now the ability to mess with electronics, the ability to fry people's heads, all of those are behind an adrenaline wall. I cannot use those unless I
I
think my life
have
is in danger.
I have another friend that can literally turn on power tools under extreme emotional instances that are not plugged into the wall, or blow up light bulbs.
I blow
That
circuit breakers.
Yeah, he told me a story once about, it was just an intense outburst of a moment as he was pointing to the light that he was getting up to go turn off, and the light exploded.
I have a friend who can walk down an aisle and every light bulb over her will pop.
I don't have that ability. Those abilities I don't have. What I've
Oh,
been
she
able to
doesn't even have to
access,
be in a mood. This is just her.
I I remember when I was a teenager. I was actually kind of like right into. I think I was 20, so just out of my teens. I was 20 years old, and I was playing a game. We were trying to read each other's minds, and I was projecting, and she was trying to read my mind, and I was projecting. I was focused on a single point on her eye, and because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to get her to, I was trying to project the thought into her head. And when I was focusing too hard on that single point, and I blew a blood vessel on that point of her eyeball.
Ooh.
And it, I I've never done that again. Focusing so hard. So
Well,
I
we do
know I
have to
have
learn.
that there.
We do have to learn how to control these things. And unfortunately, we learn best by hurting others.
It is unfortunate, but it's like you don't even know you can do that until somebody gets hurt. It's like, oh crap, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to do that. But
Exactly.
now I know it's there.
Now you know it's there and that it has to be controlled.
I remember with my siblings and other friends, we were playing in that same game in a big room, and I remember knowing, okay, I'm not projecting my thoughts anymore. But this time it was my turn to read in the room. And it's like we read the room, and whatever image pops up, we speak, describe whatever image pops up, and somebody will say, this is what I was thinking of, and I was the only one that ever got it right. It's like I remember talking about describing like a fairy with purple and pink wings, and my sister pops up. I had the image of my poster in my head, and I'm like, oh, okay. And another friend of mine was imagining a fireball in his hand, and he was all like, and I literally acted that one out, and I remember him getting very quiet and his eyes bulging out. It's like, this guy actually is doing it. And I was the only one that ever got it right.
Well,
Um,
I've had folks um, usually at public things where people knew I was SSP. But I've had people basically call me a fake totally telepathically as they walked past me. And if it's the same individual over and over, I eventually get pissed and I will do a front door telepathy and let them know that, yes, I do practice this. And I had one man who is a speaker tell me, I never felt you come in, I never felt you leave, but I heard every word clearly. And I go, I was trained by Draco. They don't let you stomp in their head.
Kat on one thing, the kind of training she went through under the Draco, they used the same method, the torture type method, but it wasn't the same kind of torture. It was direct combative assault kind of torture.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they were creating stress by putting you in a combative environment as a child, where you have to defend yourself somehow, and you're not able to do it physically, so you have to do it psychically. I remember Kat, her ability was she was being assaulted psychically. They were just drilling into her head psychically, invading every crevice of her mind. And she got so tired of it that her abilities manifested. She was actually, as a child, able to push out the mind of a Draco.
That's
And that's,
amazing.
Kat was able to do that. And
That's incredibly amazing.
so her abilities, she began to focus on that telepathic aspect of her abilities, and she became very strong at it. Uh, Will's ability manifested when he was being psychically fed on by a Draco. He would come in the room and he would literally feed on Will's life force until Will's subconscious said no more. He started pulling his life force back to himself so
Well,
strongly. He started pulling life force out of the Draco.
Will is an incredibly strong, very gifted individual. And I'm
My
really honored to know him.
he has one of his stints was a member on me and Kat's team. And what we've started to remember was we were not the founding members of the team. Um, it was people came and went.
Mm-hmm.
This was like a human team of humans that have Draco DNA in them that were raised and trained by reptilians in the Empire. Um, they're all put in this team, and members come and go. Um, you know,
I was not one of those people. I was raised among the Germans on Mars.
well, I have multiple times. Only one of them was I with the Draco. Then I have another one where um, I spent time on in Mars Defense Force as a shuttle pilot.
Mm.
I spent time in Kruger. I spent time on a German teardrop shaped craft. And I also had spent time as a field effect generator engineer, designing new, more advanced field effect generators for FTL flight. My time with the Draco, when they were putting me through the stress to manifest my psychic abilities, it was almost like a physical assault, where I was made to be, basically I was weaker than everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't able to defend myself. I wasn't able to control the situation. I was completely not in control. And it was that whole situation. I don't remember the exact situations, but I got tired of not being in control. I got so obsessed with needing to be in control, needing to be stronger than everyone else around me, that my psychic ability manifested as um, a way of manipulating my environment. It was almost like my willpower overpowers the matter around me. Um, I was. It kind of went along with the combat training I was undergoing um, in the combat school. When the Dracos, when they're taught fighting, the first thing they're taught is mind over matter. They're the first thing they're taught is basically first off, it's a mental thing and it's a subconscious thing. If your subconscious belief system if your subconscious believes that your fist is going to get hurt when you punch this wall, your fist is going to get hurt. But if your subconscious believes that your fist is just going to go straight through the wall, then your fist goes straight through the wall. This is the first thing you're taught. And my abilities kind of manifested along those lines, where I became insanely strong.
Well, I remember at Langley when I was being trained, I had the mesh of electrodes that you see in Stranger Things. And they did start off with crush the can and stuff and proceeded to killing animals and killing other children. And at some point, they involved the worker Draco in my training, not the alphas, not the warriors, but the green guys that look like Dino the dinosaur, but they stand upright. They're just a little bit bigger than humans.
They're about 6 to 7 feet tall.
Yeah, they're just a little bit bigger. And they involved those, and they have telepathic abilities, so they're not wimps. And they taught me it's not exactly by location. It's not exactly astral travel because you're more physical than you are in astral, but you're not actually moving from one place to the other like by location. But it's like
Like an in-between.
it's like Carlos Castaneda talks about the ghost self that Don Juan produced. And the ghost self, I know that's not the term he used, but the ghost self is able to manipulate objects like a physical being, but there's no real physical presence.
I
And
have
so
minor
that was
experience with that.
that was one of the things that I've been trying. I've been personally working on how to use that technique to actually teleport.
I don't
Because
remember how I teleported. I just remembered that I was doing it in a combat high stress situation.
you know how you can remember something, but it feels like you're behind a barrier, so you're not remembering
It's
it
like it
well?
feels distant. It's like it feels distant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the memory of the ability is.
Yeah.
I know I should be able to do it. I just can't quite figure out how.
As for this bilocation ghosting type of thing you're talking about, back when I was uh, trying to really hard train myself to astral project, I remember when I was living at the house, I remember laying in the living room recliner. It was the middle of the night, completely quiet, nobody's around, and I'm laying back and I'm trying to lift myself out of my body, and then I started getting the idea, you know what? I'm going to imagine myself across the room, and I'm going to visualize what it'd be like looking through my eyes at myself sitting in the recliner from across the room. And I'm going to imagine myself literally standing there across the room. And after about 10-15 minutes of this, suddenly I see myself in the recliner from across the room. I jump up, open my eyes. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
My entire screen just went black.
Oh, and now you're gone. Well, we're back after a computer refix. So where were we?
All right. I was telling you about my little experience. Um, so I remember looking at myself from across the room, and then suddenly I jumped up out of the recliner, opened my eyes, and there I am seeing myself in astral form at the exact same spot I was imagining myself being. And I'm just staring at myself, and I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like, okay, this is weird. I don't know what's going on. And suddenly I start walking around the house. I'm like, I get tired of just staring at myself and doing nothing. So I
Yeah.
go into the kitchen to get myself something to drink. And the other me is just kind of like floating like a foot behind me, just following me. Everywhere I go, he's just like a foot behind me. He's just there, just following me. And I see him. I see me. And
Does
I'm like,
anybody else see this?
I'm gonna get to that part.
Okay.
Um, so I'm like, after like an hour and a half of trying to make sense of this, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea how to get you back in. I have no idea what to do. So I'm just gonna go to bed. So I went to bed, and as I'm falling asleep, there he is at the foot of my bed. You know, he's just the whole time I see him there. He's just the whole time. He's just standing at the foot of my bed. And I realize at some point, I realize It's like an astral version of me, copy of me that was trying to get back in.
Okay.
And but because I was awake and fully conscious and not in that um, frequency zone that he could re-enter, there was no re-entering.
Yeah.
I learned in that moment, I learned during that experience that there's a region that your mental frequency, your body's frequency has to be in for exit and re-entry. And if you break that, this copy can't get back in. And so the memories that this copy is generating do not get back into your head. Do not, there is no transfer of memories until he re-enters.
Did he go back in when you were asleep?
I don't know. I have no memory of that time, but the next morning I wake up, and I was living at my dad's house during this time, and he tells me, Matt, were you in my room last night? And I said, no. He tells me the story of how he was, how you wake up and go to sleep multiple times throughout the night.
Mm-hmm.
Well, during one of these sessions where he's just coming back into reality from being asleep, he sees me standing by the TV in his bedroom, just standing there. And he jumps up. He's like, because he didn't know what it was or that it was me at that moment. But when he jumps up and he's fully awake, I'm not there anymore. So he was in that zone where he could see the astral plane in that moment.
Okay.
While he was waking up, and he saw me standing there. And as soon as he left that zone, suddenly he couldn't see me standing there anymore. And when he went back through his memories, he was able to clearly see that it was me standing there. And he gave me the time frame that would happen, and that was about 45 minutes after I had gone to bed.
So at least 45 minutes later, you were still out wandering.
A copy of me was still out wandering.
Yeah.
So there was that experience. And then I told him what I had did the night before, or I should say the morning before, because it was after midnight when I was doing that. And so when you're telling your story, that what came back to memory. That was maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I remember you from then. We've known each other, what, 3, 4 years?
About 3, maybe.
Yeah.
3 to 3.5, I think.
Yeah. I do remember most of the people I know. General time frame. Yeah. So.
My memories of astral travel are limited. I don't know where I'm failing at or what I'm doing wrong. I just don't know.
Since my stuff was activated, 2013, I'm generally aware of my astral stuff. And I've gone visiting people. And some of them remember, but most of them don't. I've stopped visiting the ones that don't remember because if they don't remember, what's the point?
The only time I remember you visiting was when you took me to that Sea of Gold light.
Oh, yeah.
Twice, 2 nights in a row. I remember waking up freaking out that there was this weird freaky looking woman in this place of just white light floating around me, kind of like enjoying herself, and I'm freaking out. It's like, who is this?
So what did I told you in daytime I was going to take you there. Come on.
Well, the thing is what I'm realizing is that if you're not lucid when you're astral traveling, you're not in full control of all your mental faculties,
Ah,
and
okay.
you don't remember all of it. You have to be fully lucid in order to remember and to be in fully control of all your faculties.
Okay.
If you're
That
not
makes sense.
lucid, it's almost like being drugged. It's
You're on a trip.
you're on a trip, but at the same time, you're also not in control of what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're feeling and thinking. It's only a part of you,
Now,
not the whole you.
that place of light, when I go there, it's a bright gold and it's like a liquid light, and yeah, you can just float in it. And
When you
and
took me
it's like floating in water, and it's warm and
when you took me the
comforting.
first time, so that was the first time you took me. Then I asked you to take me again. I'm like, okay, let's try this again. And you took me the second night, and what I remember telling you what I remembered, and I was still not fully lucid. I only remembered a little bit. Um, but what I did remember was all of a sudden the bright light went away, and it was literally like I could physically see the gold liquid itself
Hmm.
that was the atmosphere of that dimension, of that density. And off in the distance, just floating there, were these islands way, way off in the distance. I remember you saying you'd never seen those islands.
No, I'd never seen the islands. I My eyes stay at the it's too bright to see.
That was the first time I went. The second time I went, all of a sudden I could see miles around me. I could see
Yeah.
very far off into the distance islands.
Well,
And it was almost like they're just floating there in the liquid. It was like
mhm.
there was a bottom rocky section of the island, like it was floating, like on Avatar, you had those islands that were floating over the planet. And it was like the bottom was all rocky, but then you had green grass and trees, and it was like a, you know, that's kind of what I was seeing off in the distance.
Well, I've been there lots of times. I've still never seen it, but I tend to see it as too bright of light.
There were objects that looked like light zipping around slowly, almost like beings off in the distance.
Well, I never
Um,
thought I was the only one that knew where it was.
yeah, so I think the ones that I was looking at off in the distance by the islands, they might be the actual natives of that dimension.
Could be. Um, when I died in 1984, that was where I went. I did not go through the tunnel with the white light. I was not greeted by anyone. I passed out dead and came to there. And this guy I saw, I have had contact with. He's one of the gurus out there. He calls himself Lord Su,
Lord Sue.
SU. Um, he's from oh, what is the name of that group? Well, he's from one of the cults out there, and he and I talked for off and on for about 6 months, and he gave me a lot of really good advice and instructions. And one of the things he said was that if you've ever been somewhere astrally or when you were dead, or that
You can always go back.
you can always go back. that you can, it's almost a time travel leap to get there again.
It's,
And
you remember this, it's like the memory of it is the resonant signature of it. And as
yeah,
long as you know the resonant signature of it, you can essentially blink there. Suddenly you're there
mhm.
again. It's just like how hyperdrive works.
Exactly. It's just like how hyperdrive works. And I've been able to take people there.
Took me there.
People who needed a calm place to go. Because it's calm, it's peaceful. It's almost like being in one of those units where that you feel nothing, no sensory input, sensory
Sensory deprivation
deprivation
tank.
tanks. Yes, it's almost like being in one of those, except that you see the light, and it's very calming. And I use it. I use going there instead of meditation some days.
Well, for me, that experience, it was, I could see everything that was happening off in the distance.
Well,
So
I couldn't because it's too bright. But
I don't understand why we had different experiences in it. Like why I could see all of that and you couldn't. I'd like to understand that.
personal frequencies, I'm going to guess that I'm just a little bit off of it enough that I can't really see well. Um,
Well, why was I just, you know, matching that frequency then?
Maybe you're a better match to it than I am.
Well, I'm just saying it's like, did my past self, life self, have experience there or something?
Well, my soul family decided I needed to go there for a little bit to chill out, and it worked. I did not want to come back the first time, so I now know I'm allowed to visit but not to stay there. But Lord Sue gave me, you were talking about the being able to see 360.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lord Sue gave me an exercise to do to help with that for people who think they can't. Um, he said to create for myself a flaming sword and to place it at different points around me, behind me, above me, below me, and keeping my head forward to be able to see it with my third eye at all times. And you practice that for 30 minutes at a time. And eventually you get better at it. It's like anything
That
else.
makes perfect sense.
It,
I suspect you can use anything, not just a flaming sword, just anything that focuses your mind to that point in space.
Probably. But he said, a flaming sword will get your attention.
Yeah, I
So,
remember my first genuine astral travel that I can remember. Now, I understand that every time you fall asleep, you astral project out of your body. It's how your body recuperates
yeah.
um, and regenerates itself. It can't do that while you're conscious in the body. So you actually, and if you're not lucid, you'll just float there over the body in the sleep state,
Mm-hmm.
where that in that state you enter your mind's universe, your own inner universe. But if you're lucid conscious during this, that's when you're astral traveling, moving around and interacting with your environment. And then there's states in between where you're just not lucid, but there's enough of you that's conscious, that's moving around, but you just don't remember it. Other people remember you interacting with them or objects or whatnot, but then you don't remember that.
Oh,
Or you
well,
remember tiny bits and pieces of it. Um,
when I visit people and they don't remember it, I don't go back, because it feels like, even if
An
they've given,
invasion.
it feels like I'm invading them, even if they've given consent while they were awake. And I don't visit people unless I've asked them first. I'm
Right.
not just invading someone.
Right. It's like an invasion of personal space. They don't remember it, so why go back?
Yeah, it just creates memories that you don't share with anyone.
That exactly. It's almost like I lost the word anyway. I remember my first astral travel that I remembered. I remember when I finally made it out of my body while being fully lucid. Jael grabs me from behind and literally says the words, "Now hold on tight. Now here we go." And we went flying. And he brought me somewhere that I now understand it to be my superior officer
Uh,
in the Guardians. Um, I don't know what the purpose of this meeting was, but I was it. I was made that I could still remember it, but the entire audio is completely lost. During the
I hate when
encounter,
they
the
do that.
entire memory of the encounter, the all of the audio of the entire two-way conversation is gone. I have no memory of it.
Yeah, I
I
really
have
hate when they
I
do
have visual memory of the whole experience.
that. Yeah. Speaking of, you leave the body and you told hold on tight. I have an angelic person who's been hanging around for about a year, and my astral self has wings, but I've never learned to fly. I just do the whole teleport thing in astral. And this angel has decided I need to learn to use my wings. And so he's been teaching me to fly.
Well,
And
the thing is in astral form, you don't even need wings to fly. So the purpose of these appendages might not exactly be for flight, exactly, from what
I
I've been
was,
pondering.
he's told me that the number of sets of wings has to do with your status in that realm, but that I need to learn how to use them. And I have 2 sets of wings there now. I grew the last set in this past year.
Gotcha.
And it's a lot harder to fly with 2 sets of wings than it is with one. And because they have to coordinate.
Yeah.
And it's like driving a stick shift.
Well,
Yeah,
that's easy for me. I've been driving a stick shift my entire life.
yeah, but remember when you had to learn it?
Oh God, people would laugh at me all the time. It's like,
Because they remembered going through it. but, but yeah, so I'm in that stage of learning to fly.
yeah.
And gee, I haven't talked about this publicly. Yeah, I do interact with angels.
Or at
And
least what, or at
I
least
do
what we
have wings in
refer to as
astral.
angels.
I interact with angels, and I have in astral. I have 2 sets of wings, and I'm having to be taught how to fly with them like I was an infant. And
I don't know what they actually call themselves. I know they don't call themselves angels. I mean, that's an ancient language's word for messenger. I think it's um, Greek or Latin or something.
well, the word he uses with me is cherubim.
That
So
fits.
that he is from the cherubim collective. That's how he puts it.
I would,
Although
when you say that,
it's telepathy, so
right?
it's whatever
Your
language he would.
interpretation of your mind's subconscious's interpretation of it.
Yeah.
When you say that, the first thing that pops in my head is they were once where we are now, and they're just further along the path.
Well, I
That
know.
pops in my head.
Well, I know why he showed up, and I know why he's sticking around, and I'm grateful for him. He's not the only one in my world. I have 4 of them that pop in and out now, and they
Mostly, I've
each have
got
they each have a
ETs that pop
different
up.
they each have a different role, but they're from what they call the Cherubim Collective, and when this last one showed up, when he appeared before me, he says, well, the Cherubim Collective decided that you needed protection and that we weren't going to let you die. So they asked for volunteers, and you're stuck with me.
They asked for volunteers. You're stuck with me. Okay.
He's this big, big guy. And
aside from Jael, the only beings that that actually come and visit and will stand there and stare at me from the other side of the room for hours on end are gray-looking beings, human-looking beings, reptilians. There's a couple of mantids that have done that throughout, the past years. That'll, and it's like they don't interact. They just stand there and observe and stare at me. The past few nights, there have been this being stare at me from in the corner of my room. He's got like red lenses like over his eyes, brown skin, but he's shaped like a gray.
I haven't heard of those. If you
Past
find out
2 or 3 nights.
if you find out what race he is, let me know.
And I have no idea. He doesn't interact. He just stands there and observes while I sleep. And I'm like, it's like I'm going to bed now, and I turn off all the lights, and there he is, just standing there observing. And it's like I wake up in the middle of the night, never moved from his spot, standing there observing. I'm like, and I've just gotten so used to him being there. It's just, okay, I'm going back to bed now. And it's like I don't know what to think. It's like he's not interacting with me. He's not answering my questions. Who are you? What is your purpose, motive, reason for being here? Just standing there. Are you doing something to me or around me while I'm asleep? Like, what's going on? And I wake up regularly.
I shift frequencies.
I wake up regularly with grays in my face.
Well, like I'm trying to explain something to you here.
Okay? I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
I shift frequencies regularly, and it makes it where sometimes I'm like invisible to 3D people, which has its benefits. But when you shift out of your own space into another frequency, if you're close enough, you can see them but not interact with them. I have had a whole series of beings that would traipse through my bedroom all night long, and
oh God, yes,
they're about 4 feet tall, and they appear black until I shift further into their frequency.
And then you start to see their shapes.
And then they are human looking. They're just short, and they wear brown clothes. And I guess they're what people would have called the brownies or the leprechauns in the past.
I've seen those.
But they are not demonic. They're just living their own lives in their own frequency, and it just happens to be in the same physical space as ours.
Now, I've experienced that. but most of the time what I'm experiencing is I can feel their eyes directed at me. They do have an intent. They see me and they are observing me, and I can psychically see that in
Well,
their own
if
heads.
you can see them, they can see you.
Exactly. Now, there were these two tall grays once, and they were about my height, maybe a few inches taller. Back at the
You
house,
want to tell the audience how tall you are?
I am exactly 5 foot 10 3/4 inches. If you wanted to be exact, they're maybe a few inches taller than me, give or take. It was two of them. I'm watching TV in the living room. I don't remember what I was watching. I just remember these two grays suddenly right in front of me on either side of the recliner, and I think one of them had a pad in his hand, and they're just observing, and they're turning to each other, and suddenly I can hear them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I'm hearing the conversation, and I'm just watching TV, and I'm just letting this play out like I'm pretending I don't see or hear any of this.
Uh-huh.
I'm just,
But
observing
your
what
blood
they're doing.
pressure and pulse rate went up.
No, I I was disassociating even back then. It's like this is normal for me. I've been seeing this kind of shit since I was a kid. It
Yeah.
used to scare the hell out of me when I was a kid. And now it's like I'm just so used to it and I understand what it is and who it is. It's like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and observe and see what's going on. And I got up out of the recliner. I went into the kitchen, fixed me a little snack. I don't remember what time it was. I know it was dark outside. And they followed me into the kitchen. And one of them said something. And I remember turning and looking right at him, square in the eyes. And then turned around and went back to what I was doing. And I remember him turning to his buddy and saying, I think he can see us. It's like, can you see us? And I just went about my business and just did my thing.
Playing
He's
my
asked, he's asking me if I can see him and hear him. And I just went about my business.
So you're playing mind games with the interdimensionals, huh?
It's like, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah, well, I had
I've
something.
got to get something out of the situation.
I had something decide to invade my astral space last
Oh.
night. It was like a 6 foot alligator, but it was lime green on the top and white on the bottom, and it had a hand with 5 fingers.
Mhm.
And
That
I
technique
told it
that Lou
no.
taught me,
Huh?
about creating a wall, a screen. Um, Hang on, give me a second. Something came up on the screen. Okay, about creating a psychic wall and barrier. I
Mm-hmm.
started doing that, and I've noticed that the guys that are just there to observe will immediately relocate outside of whatever I place, my barrier in. And if I encompass
Mm-hmm.
the barrier, if I encompass my entire camper, they will immediately relocate themselves. But the ones that are there with more sinister motives, that are there to do something to me, some sort of experiment or test or evaluation or whatever, they'll fight it. They'll try to hold their space where they were standing when I created this barrier until they get pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that are there just to observe, or they're there, as a kind of protection or defense, they will recognize that I see them, I'm creating space. and they'll respect that and immediately relocate
Yeah.
to
Um,
outside the barrier.
the ones that I know are there to protect me, I have created exceptions for.
Mhm.
So those beings can come in and continue as normal. But anything that's not on my exceptions list is stuck outside my energy field. And this particular being last night decided he wanted to come in. And I do a thing where I have a visualized hand that just picks them up and puts them out. And I did that to him, and he was shocked.
When there's someone in my environment, in astral dimension, and my barrier isn't cutting it, and I really want him gone, suddenly out of nowhere, two oblong shaped lights that are almost human looking, almost, it's just lights that are as long as a human, suddenly grab them by either shoulder and drag them away.
Cool.
And I'm like, okay.
That works.
If I wake up now, if I'm having a dream and there's somebody invading my mind in the dream, and I've had that happen, especially grays that were trying to vampirically siphon off of me.
I've had that happen with humans.
I've had that happen with grays and other beings that are similar looking to grays. What it was in the dreams, they're in there. It's almost like a nightmare. It's like they're trying to create an environment of fear and terror, and I become lucid in it, and I notice what's going on, and I call them out on it. And the moment I call them out on it, suddenly they show up right in front of me in the dream. And I remember one time he came at me, and I went to punch him in the face. And the moment my fist makes contact, I wake up.
Well,
And there he is in my face. And suddenly these two lights are dragging him away, as I'm waking up. So I don't know how that works, how they come in, or who that is doing that, dragging people away, or, what parameters they decide to do that. I don't know how all that works. I just see it happening under certain circumstances.
yeah.
It's always after I notice the being and want him gone.
So your intent has something to do with it.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I have.
But it doesn't happen to all of them.
No, I have shielding up that keeps everything out that isn't a predetermined friendly. But
my shielding is not
some,
that strong. It's I don't have my shielding up all the time.
But I have mine up all the time. But
I'm not strong enough for that.
There have been people, humans, who have been able to override it. And one of them just struts right in and says, what was it he told? I'm going to have to edit it because part of it involves personal stuff. But he basically came in and said, here you've got this important person that you're supposed to be guarding, and you're letting her die. And basically told them off. And so because I have guards, what my guards did was they all got together and they just gave him a big group hug. Well, when somebody breaks in and your guards give him a group hug, you don't throw that person out. So that person gets to come in. Then there was another person who came in without any invitation, and I have a bed in my astral zone, and it's a really big bed. And because my major guards are canids, and they're like 15 feet tall, and so it's big enough they can sleep with me, around me.
Jael's around just under 8 feet tall, closer to the 7 foot tall range.
Yeah, well, I've been sleeping with these canids for almost a decade now. And, you know, and this guy stands at the foot of my bed and he says, "Oh, how cute. You're sleeping with your doggies."
What?
Well, when they're curled up asleep, they do look like German Shepherd or Wolf, but bigger. And they got offended deeply and
I can imagine.
stood up to their full height, and they look like Anubis when they're standing. And even in astral, I could smell where he shit himself. And he left, and he's never been back.
That reminds me of something that happened. I remember at the time. This was back when I was a real hardcore Christian, and I believed
I used to be a
that
hardcore Christian.
Jael, at the time I was calling him John, was an angel, guardian angel. Now I understand he's a member of the Guardians, and he's my guide, keeping me on mission. But at the time, I told my sister, and I thought everybody had one at the time. I don't understand how I was rationalizing that. I think it's stupid now, but I believed everyone had a guardian angel at the time. And I remember washing dishes. Yeah, I remember washing dishes at. I was washing dishes. One of my younger sisters was sitting at the counter, peeling potatoes for potato salad that night. And while we're talking about guardian angels and stuff, and she's making fun. And I told her, you don't want to do that. You do not want to upset your guardian angel. And she starts wailing on, because she doesn't believe it. And she starts making fun of her supposed guardian angel. And I said, April, you don't want to do that. These are not people you want to mess with. They're here to protect you, but they're not going to take your shit. And I remember while I'm washing dishes and she's cracking all kinds of jokes left and right, and then suddenly I hear this big bang, pow! And then I turn to look, and she's practically flown out of her the stool she was in, almost in the garbage can that she was over peeling potatoes, and she screamed. And when I went to look, there was this big whelp on the back of her head.
Ooh.
And she has never badmouthed anybody from the spirit realm ever again.
Good idea. Good thing she didn't get more hurt in the process.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, and I thought it was a fun, interesting idea to tell my younger sisters, who were 2 and 4 years old, that if they didn't get out of the living room right now, there would be demons coming up out of the floor to grab them and pull them under them. I told them that.
Oh my God.
While my sister, April, kicked me in the balls, got so angry, she kicked me in the balls, and I went to slap her, and as my hand is going in the mid-swing, now, mind you, we're alone. It's just the 3 of us in the house. I hear from the kitchen. I hear from the kitchen my voice yelling out as plain as day, as plain as I can hear you now, Matthew Michael. And I freaked out. I stopped. I froze. I was
Used
like,
your full name. Oh my goodness.
full name, Matthew Michael. And while I'm freaking out, eyes bulging out of my sockets, suddenly my sisters know something's wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, did y'all hear that? And she goes, here's what? They didn't hear anything.
Oh my.
And I'm like, so.
Well, there's a lot of times that you're the only one that hears your angel, guardian, whatever.
Yeah, he was keeping me in line.
Yeah. The canids that hang out with me, they're guardians. The orc who hang out here are not guardians. They are they belong to a family member of mine. And then there are Draco Imperial household guards.
Jer visits me from time to time. It's really the only reptilian I interact with.
I interact with a couple of them, and no, I'm not going to say who they are. Most people hate them, and for some reason, these particular ones have decided to guard, protect, guide, and enable me. And
Yeah,
I really think I'm on a positive mission, so it's confusing to me why everybody else hates them. But it is very likely that they are just like people and treat one person well and another one bad.
Jer, when he comes by, it's usually either just to check up on me, see, if I'm doing okay, I'm alive, I'm have I done anything with the lessons he gives me. He's trying to teach me how to better master my astral projections and energy form and all of that. There are some energy work techniques that he's taught me that are really interesting. One of which is literally like imagining everything inside of my skin. It's like as an empty space. Kind of like a giant lung, just one whole lung, and it's like the outside space is a heavier pressure of and the actual atmosphere is made up of white light. And it's like you suck in the white light through every pore across the entire flesh surface from every direction, and you fill that inner empty space until you hold in and it's a higher pressure than the outside atmosphere. It's like you're breathing in, you're taking in a breath, and then you exhale, you're exhaling all of that white light back into the atmosphere, and you just keep repeating that. I did that one time for an hour, and I passed out from it. And when I woke up,
Hyperventilated.
when I woke up, it was like the entire body was one big tingly fingling.
You hyperventilated.
No, this wasn't a. No, this was. I wasn't doing it to my breaths. I was literally just imaging in my imagination and imposing that on my flesh. I wasn't doing it to my breaths. I was simply imagining my whole body breathing in the white light, and then
Okay.
imagining it exhaling the white light. I don't do this to my breath.
Okay.
I know other people who practice qigong and stuff do things to their breath. They breathe in, and then they breathe in the light as they're breathing in with their lungs. And I've never been able to really get that, or at least execute it properly. I just sit there and I let my lungs do what they're gonna do, breathe in, breathe out, and I just focus my imagination and I impose that imagination on my 3D body, and I
Okay.
physically imagine every pore, like the entire surface of my skin. It's like I'm seeing. It's like when I'm practicing the technique, I see inside my skin, on the inside of the entire skin suit, is empty space, and I'm sucking in the atmosphere surrounding that skin into that empty space, and I'm filling up that empty space as much as I can pack in, and then releasing it. And then I'm just constantly going in and out, until it's as much as I can pack in as I can, and then letting it go. And I've noticed that I can't do my entire body all at once. But it's like the more I practice, the more of my body I can encompass.
Well, that's a pretty good practice. My guides are pushing me towards Tai Chi.
Yeah.
And I know that in Nacht Waffen, we practiced a lot of Tai Chi exercises.
In the Empire, they have their own systems. It's not whole systems, it's techniques. There are an entire people of psychic people, but the children, they're young, still have to learn how to control it. And so this energy work is mandatory lessons that are just, this is just part of growing up for all people in the Empire.
Yeah. I had the injury last year, and then surgery in October, and physical therapy from January through first part of April. And then we had the lockdown. And so now that the lockdown is finally being released in California, if the local group that teaches Tai Chi is still going to be in business, then I'm going to start doing Tai Chi classes. I had told my physical therapist that was what the direction I was aiming for, and he thought that was reasonable.
The thing you need to understand about Tai Chi is more often you're going to find instructors that don't really understand the energy work. All they see is an aesthetic movement. And
yeah, but I already know the energy work, and I still play with energy balls.
There's specific visualizations you have to go through with each movement in order to properly move the energy. The energy is moved. You can literally be standing there without moving at all, and be moving the energy exactly how you're supposed to be. The movements, the physical movements, are mental aids. That's it. They're mental aids. And that's what they were originally, back when it was just Neigong, before even Qigong, before Tai Chi, there was Neigong. Neigong focuses on the mental visual aspect of the energy movement. You can be standing there in a standing or sitting in a sitting meditation, laying down meditation, it doesn't matter. You can move the energy just as you would if you were creating the movement physically. The physical movement is solely as an aid, a mental aid.
Well, it may be
to draw your
as
focus
a mental
in.
aid, but for the practice. But at the same time, this particular body needs some physical motion.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I'm looking at going in that direction, hoping that the instructor understands, because we've been in lockdown. I haven't even had a chance to talk to him, find out where he's coming from. So, but I'll just tell him, look, I already play with energy balls. I understand it's supposed to be about energy movement, but at the same time, what are you teaching?
Exactly. You're going to come across teachers that are going to say, oh my God, you're crazy. That stuff doesn't exist. And then you're going to come across teachers who go, okay, good. We can forego the basics.
And I'm going to just go and toss it at him. Say,
It
guess
was
what?
playing with energy balls that initially that made me astral project that first time.
Was
I
it?
had I had created an energy ball, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? And I was just learning about the chakras and stuff, and so I took my energy ball and I started putting it inside my body, and I started being able to physically feel that energy ball, but then it started knocking up against other spheres that were already there, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my God, that's got to be a chakra right there. And so I started going back and forth with the energy ball, and I was supercharging that chakra, and what had happened was it cascaded, it overflowed,
Mhm.
and the overflow caused an event where the energy pulsed uh, repeatedly. It was from the chakras core to the outermost periphery of my energy field. It actually got stronger and denser and sped up to that outer periphery. And when
Mhm.
it hit that out, when it reached its apex outer periphery, it came back down. As it came back down, at the same rate, it slowed down and became less intense, and it just kept doing that. It was like, and the experience was so physically violent feeling, it caused me to pass out. And when I passed out, suddenly my eyes opened. I was fully lucid. The entire room was blue in color. Like I could see everything. It's just everything was blue. And suddenly I'm floating over my bed, and that's when Jael grabs me from behind and says, now hold on tight. Now here we go. And it's still funny to me how he said that. It was just the vocal expression. I tried to mimic that every time I repeat it.
Yeah. Um,
And then we went flying, and brought me to that room that looked almost Greek like. But the guy that walked in looked like an elf with long hair, but he was wearing Chinese emperor's clothing. Even the weird funny hat.
hmm. I
He had
haven't
he
been across those people.
he had Caucasian skin, like this color, but he may have had a almost slight Asian appearance, but looked for the most part like an elf right out of Lord of the Rings. And beautiful silky skin, beautiful silky hair, straight hair, and but his clothing attire looked right out of a painting. Any painting you see of ancient Chinese emperors, even that funny hat, that's what he wore. Now the room that I was in was maybe as wide as maybe a few feet more wide than my camper. My camper's 33 feet, so
Hmm.
maybe it was like 40 feet. But at first I thought it was round the all the way around, but then I noticed it was flat panels,
Okay.
and one of the panels was missing, and it was that whole section was a hall that led out of the room. And at every point where there was a panel interconnection several feet away from the wall, it was far enough away you could walk around it. It was Greek looking pillars.
Hmm.
And that was the room I found myself in. And this guy walks in, and he's basically kind of like pacing a circle around me as he's talking to me. And I'm talking back to him. we're having a two-way interactive conversation for a while. I don't even remember how long it was, but I have no memory of any of the audio.
Well, the only time that I have ever interacted with my counsel that is supposed to be supervising and assisting me was when that first guide decided to betray me. And they had the best metaphor for it would be like a captain's inquest. They did that and it lasted like 3 freaking weeks. And I guess they had to decide what they were going to do about him and whether it had so compromised my mission that to pull me out or not. And at the end, they said, well, you would be within your rights if you wanted to quit. But then they showed me what would happen if I did. And I chose to continue. The consequences were beyond what I wanted to be responsible for. And I'm not going to share them on air.
Understandable.
Well, we've covered a lot of strange territory in this one.
Yeah.
Not
a lot of stuff I'm dealing with. A whole lot of stuff you're dealing with.
There's a lot of interdimensional work that goes with dealing with SSP memories because they made sure we had psionic abilities, and those same psionic abilities that they wanted us to have also give us the interdimensional experiences. And so it is a part of the whole package, but not one that we normally discuss at all. Because, to be honest, normal humans have enough trouble dealing that we were in space.
Yeah.
And saying I was physically in space and yet I'm back on Earth and having these psionic experiences. But I want to make it clear to those listening that we do know the difference. I know what is 3D Earth real. I know that when I was in space, it was also 3D real. And in the same timeline that we are in now, and because I came back to this timeline, and the interdimensional or astral experiences that I have lucid are not 3D physical. So, and it's, when you're in them, it's really easy to tell, and it's really hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it.
Right.
So, you have anything
I
to add?
don't even try explaining it anymore. Like, if you haven't gone through it, there's no point.
Well, I made a post, what was it, yesterday, saying that a lot of people, I have so little in common with them that it makes conversation almost impossible.
Yeah, I read that post.
So this is an example of topics that are in that category. But for the million or so people out there in the public who have experienced this is important information. So, you have anything more to add?
I mean, we could go on for hours.
I'm seeing your cat wants attention.
Yeah, he's the one that's always craving attention.
Well, we've kind of slowed down, so it's probably a good place to end.
Yeah, I got to work in the morning. Otherwise, I could do this all night.
Well, thank you for being on my show, and I'll let you know when I get it uploaded.